Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Hawks Latest, your number one source for news, updates, rumors, opinions, and you guessed it, the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. I'm your host, Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL, and today we've got a loaded episode filled with updates. This is the 98th episode of Hawks Latest presented by FanArt, so we are right there at 100. It's going to be super fun getting to 100. It's a great accomplishment. This channel has seen some great growth. It's been awesome to cover the team. But like I said, we've got a packed show for you today. We're going to cover everything from the Hawks latest community outreach. I was actually in attendance for it, so I've got a lot to break down about that. To some spicy player drama. That's always going on really recently in the past couple of weeks. Things have really heated up. Not just the Trae Young and Patrick Beverley beef, but there is another one that is beginning, and actually with two former Hawks players. And then also we're going to close today's video with a look at a blockbuster trade proposal. It was proposed by a NBA analyst, and it's pretty interesting. So we'll start with the incredible behind-the-scenes look at a Hawks event that truly showcases the franchise's culture. I mean, puts it really on display of what this organization is trying to build. Then we'll dive into the ongoing Patrick Beverley, Trae Young saga, which really isn't ongoing, as I say that, because Trae hasn't responded to Pat Bev's latest claims. But we're going to talk about Pat Bev's latest thing that he said, and then also a big trade rumor that involves a hometown star in Jaylen Brown. So without further ado, let's get right into it and start with the fact that 2 nights ago at the Emory Sports Medicine Complex, the official practice facility of the Atlanta Hawks, they hosted their 14th annual Coaches Clinic. And luckily enough, I was fortunate enough to be there in person to cover this incredible event. I was media there, and really it was just an awesome event, top to bottom. This behind-the-scenes moment really says everything about the Hawks culture. Atlanta seriously knows how to engage with their community, and that has been a really big thing, especially, in recent years, just building that culture with the Atlanta Hawks. That's something that they really emphasize, getting involved with their community and gaining relationships with people around the organization. It's a perfect example of that commitment, this event here. And, while this clinic has been a staple with the Atlanta Hawks for over a decade. Like I said, this is the 14th annual one. This year marked the first time it was hosted actually in partnership with the Hawks G League affiliate, the College Park Skyhawks, which has, proven to be one of the best developmental programs in all of the NBA G League. It's definitely respected in that sense, and it should be. They've produced quality NBA players such as, Jalen Johnson, Vit Krejci. The list goes on, and I certainly see a lot of these guys involved with the Skyhawks, continuing to make those leaps. I'm looking at guys like Keaton Wallace now, Eli Njai, Jacob Toppin, guys that we can expect. But that's not really the topic for right now, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But, just talking about how the Skyhawks are getting involved with the Hawks here and hosting the Coaches Clinic, and their impact was truly felt. More than 250 coaches from across the state of Georgia were actually in attendance. It was, a wide variety of people. All of them are eager to learn from some of the best basketball minds in the world. The NBA is the highest level of basketball, and they're getting direct insight at this event from Atlanta Hawks head coaches. It's really invaluable. So Hawks head coach Quinn Snyder was supposed to be here, and he was going to kick off the event, but unfortunately, for reasons not to my knowledge, he was not able to attend. I got that text like a few hours before. I was like, no, but because that would have been real cool to at least hear from Quinn before media day next week. But the team's talented assistant coaches really stepped up to lead an outstanding evening. Like I said, from the beginning to the end, really just an awesome night, and really showed the strengths of the Hawks organization. Before the clinic began, I actually got the chance to catch up with Skyhawks head coach and Atlanta Hawks assistant coach Steve Cly, and I talked to him about the importance of events like this, not just for basketball development, but for building relationships. Coach Clyde told me it's a tremendous opportunity to connect with local coaches. Sharing knowledge is big, but building relationships and seeing those relationships grow is also a really important part of this. Entering his second season with the, as the head coach of the College Park Skyhawks, Cly also reflected on what he's learned, since moving from an assistant role to the head chair. And as you can expect, those are very different roles. And Cly broke it all down for me. He said, anybody that's ever been a head coach will tell you it's so much different from being an assistant. And the one thing I've thought about most this summer is how we teach and how we train. When you're a head coach, you have the vision of, how you want to play and how the team's supposed to look. The drills are really the tools that get that out of your team. And that couldn't be more true. So after my interview with Clyde, the event officially kicked off. It started with legendary Hawks play-by-play commentator Bob Rathbun. You all know Bob. He's in the booth with Neek every single game. He hosted a sit-down with Hawks assistant coach Mike Brey. Now, I could assume that was supposed to be Quinn Snyder originally. I don't know if Brey was supposed to talk at first, but even if he wasn't, he did a great job, and the coaches learned a lot from him. He shared valuable insight about his journey from Notre Dame to the NBA and, the differences in that. The conversation lasted about an hour between Bob Rathbun and Mike Brey, including a Q&A session at the end of it that really gave local coaches the chance to pick Brey's brain. There were several instances of they were making Coach Brey think. The mic was going around the crowd, and they were asking good questions, and I'm sure they learned a lot. So from there, the action moved onto the court, and the rest of the event really was just the assistant coaches running drills. Hawks assistant coach Kendall Manuel, he led a defensive intensity session, just really focusing on some of these defensive schemes. And it was also followed by a pick and roll breakdown with assistant coach Ashton Smith. And then later on in the day, another assistant coach had focused on advanced screening concepts like the double drag, and that was a super entertaining watch. I was really enjoying that. I mean, they were running the double drag, they were running these pick and pops, pick and rolls, stuff that we're gonna see with Trae Young and Kristaps Porzingis. Just really a lot of detailed screening, and it was fun to watch and to keep up with. They also really kind of showed how to defend it and what you can expect just out of the Hawks on both ends of the floor. To wrap things up, at the event, Coach Cly, actually, who I had interviewed prior, and some of his assistants, Seth Jackson and Kerry Corver, they gave an advanced lesson on defensive closeouts and reaction reads, specifically in the corner. A lot of the drills they did were in the left corner, but they were talking about closeouts and really placing emphasis on being off the catch. Kerry Corver did a whole lesson on this, but meeting the ball instead of just catching it in the corner and then going to work. Just valuable stuff that is impactful that you might not know is as impactful as it is. It was a perfect finale to a night packed with high-level basketball education, and that's really the best way to describe it. So before I left the event, before heading out, I did get the chance to speak with Hawks Vice President of Basketball Programs, John Babel, who's a super cool guy, very, very conversational, awesome dude. He summed up the night perfectly when I talked to him and really asked him to share his insight about it. He said, the beauty of the College Park Skyhawks is that the G League used to be called the Developmental League. And that's what tonight was all about. It's developing the future of coaches in our community, developing skills, and most importantly, developing relationships. Coaching is about connection. He's got a real point there. He also praised head coach Quinn Snyder and really emphasized what's great about Quinn and his staff for their ability to build relationships at every level. Adding that this philosophy really trickles down through the entire organization, and there's nothing more important than building relationships. And that's a very common theme between Coach Cly and John Babel. Just building relationships, earning that trust. It goes a very long way. And listen, this event was super fun to cover. For the Hawks, events like these are more than just basketball. They're about fostering a culture of teaching, growth, and connection. And there's really no better way to prepare for an exciting season than strengthening the bond between the franchise and the community. There's no better way to get people to tune in, especially that wouldn't have prior interest. I mean, this is just called an organization really taking advantage of what's dealt to them. And I was very glad that I got to cover it. So, I know y'all don't usually tune in for stuff like this. You want to see the rumors, you want to see the latest and the greatest. But I seriously just had to break down my experience there at the Hawks coaching clinic. I would love to be back next year. It was awesome. So now let's finally move on to some of the stuff that'll really get y'all talking. We'll pivot from community building to a little bit of drama because the Patrick Beverley and Trae Young saga refuses to die down, or should I say Pat Bev refuses to let it die down. So just like, when it seemed that things were cooling off, and while they still are, Beverley reignited the beef, and if you're unfamiliar, we'll break that down in just a second, by taking a shot at both Trae and the Atlanta Falcons. While that doesn't directly relate to Trae Young or the Atlanta Hawks, it certainly relates relates to the city of Atlanta, especially after what we endured this past Sunday. That was one of the worst football games I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm sure, a lot of you guys watching the video right now are big Falcons fans, and I'm sure y'all can agree with me there. That was really, really bad. I'm not going to say it was our worst game ever. I was probably, when I was tweeting through it, and because, the Falcons really make me crash out more than the Hawks ever have. It's just a really frustrating thing with the Falcons. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about the Falcons, but the more I talk about that 30-0 loss to the Carolina Panthers of all teams, one of my best friends is a huge Carolina Panthers fan. And trust me, that was not a fun rest of my day after, the stuff that I have been talking about that morning. But nonetheless, let me stay on track and talk about how, after the Falcons social media team posted a playful tweet referencing Trae with the caption, "Keep my Trae Young out your mouth," which is a nod to the famous Will Smith meme, Beverly saw his chance to clap back at Trae Young after Trae didn't respond to his previous response, kind of begging for that relevancy. So Beverly's response to that was, "And just like that, missed field goals and losing, I guess y'all fit," obviously referring to the fact that sometimes Trae Young shoots at a pretty inefficient clip and, doesn't have the greatest track record in winning and so far in his NBA career, ignoring all other context. The timing was brutal. Like I said, the Falcons had just suffered the 30-0 loss to the Carolina Panthers, dropping to 1-2 on the season. And the jab not only targeted the Falcons and, hit a real soft spot for Atlanta fans, but doubled as a subtle dig at Trae Young himself, keeping the ongoing feud, I guess, alive for now. Remember, this all started when, and here's some of the context, Beverly suggested that NBA All-Stars take the game for granted, and then Trae responded with that 12-minute video addressing the comments that Beverly said after, because Young had responded to Beverly's tweet and said, let the All-Stars speak for themselves, which, has a point there, and then Beverly called him out on his podcast. So then Trae responded with that 12-minute video addressing the comments and essentially questioning Beverly's credibility since, Patrick Beverly has never been an All-Star and has been carried his entire career, despite being a good defensive role player. Beverly, of course, fired back to that video, pointing his 9 playoff appearances, compared to Trae's 3, although Trae has played, not in the NBA for 12 seasons. He is not even close to that yet. He said, "I don't think he's won enough to even speak to me like that," which is crazy, talking to an NBA All-Star, a player that is much better than Patrick Beverly. But, turning this minor disagreement into a full-blown war of worlds is just classic Patrick Beverly. So whether this continues into the season, which it probably won't because Patrick Beverly is not on an NBA roster, which makes this whole thing even funnier. But, if history tells us anything, Beverly isn't backing down anytime soon, and he's probably going to continue to try to get Trae to respond, rage baiting him, if you will. So speaking of Hawks drama, and this isn't necessarily obviously this is not relating directly to the Trae Young Patrick Beverly beef, but there are 2 former Hawks that we just learned something a little more about their relationship when they were in Atlanta. So former Atlanta guard Jeff Teague, who was part of the 60-win team, and he added some spice of his own during a recent episode of his Club 520 podcast. Teague's one of the best former NBA players in terms of their podcasting abilities. His podcast is awesome. It's definitely one of my favorite listens. But Teague revealed that his most annoying teammate during his 12-year career was none other than Dennis Schroder, Atlanta's point guard that took over right after Teague had gotten traded away from the Hawks. According to Teague, their friction stemmed from cultural differences and some behind-the-scenes tension, stuff that wasn't really known by the national media. Schroder would reportedly show Teague texts from team executives comparing their stats and hinting at a starting role for the young German guard, which it's kind of crazy. Like, imagine a dude that's younger than you pretty much coming in and just showing you, like, hey, they're about to start me. They're about to get rid of you. I think that's pretty crazy personally. I can't blame Jeff Teague for being pretty mad at him. Teague said, in quote, "The only reason me and Dennis didn't see eye to eye is because he was from a different country. He didn't understand how stuff went. He was showing me messages from the GM and the assistant GM about how he was going to be a starter one day." Like, that's crazy. But it's kind of funny considering the competitive edge that Dennis Schroder has had his whole career. It kind of makes sense. I can see him saying that. For context, the two did play together for 3 seasons before Atlanta ultimately traded Teague to the Pacers, as you all probably remember, in 2016 to clear way for Schroder as the starter. That lasted a few seasons before Atlanta moved on into the Trae Young era, and then and let Schroder walk. Despite the tension, Teague still speaks fondly of his time in Atlanta, and he actually he claims to be a Hawks fan still, which is awesome. He even predicted on his podcast that the Hawks will probably make a deep playoff run this season, especially after adding Kristaps Porzingis. And we talked about the other day about how Teague had said that he thinks Kristaps Porzingis is going to play 70 games, and that's going to be the biggest component to the Hawks making a deep playoff run. And it absolutely is. His health is the number one thing. And being in a contract year, which, Teague specified for Porzingis, just adds that chip onto his shoulder. So hopefully his claim about that comes true. It's another reminder that locker room dynamics can be as unpredictable as the game itself. And sometimes those behind-the-scenes stories, only come to light years later, which is a situation we are witnessing here. So finally, let's talk about a blockbuster trade proposal that certainly has Hawks fans talking and Celtics fans talking alike, because I don't think now I say, either fan base wouldn't like this, but Celtics fans would have no reason not to like this, because this would be kind of a fleece, this deal that I am about to tell y'all. So Greg Swartz of Bleacher Report recently suggested a deal that would send Boston Celtics star Jaylen Brown to Atlanta. Here's what the trade would look like according to Swartz. Now, this is a little ridiculous. This would be giving up way too much if you were the Atlanta Hawks, but also when you consider the player that Jaylen Brown is, you maybe think about it. So the trade is the Atlanta Hawks receive Jaylen Brown and his ridiculous contract, and the Boston Celtics would receive Jalen Johnson, Zachary Ricochet, and a top 10 protected 2029 first-round pick. On paper, of course, Jaylen Brown will be a dream fit for the Hawks. The four-time NBA All-Star and NBA Finals MVP, a resume like no other. Brown has averaged over 24 points per game for the past 5 seasons and is one of the league's premier two-way wings, just excellent on both ends. Proven guy, Finals MVP. Pairing him with Trae Young, Kristaps Porzingis, and Dyson Daniels could instantly catapult the Atlanta into the upper tier of the Eastern Conference. However, though, there are really big concerns with just everything around Jaylen Brown. So he's entering his prime right now at 28 years old, but carries that massive salary that could restrict Atlanta's flexibility for years to come. I mean, that would cap the team. That would bringing in he has one of the most expensive contracts in the NBA. It was for a very short period of time the most expensive. That would not be good for Atlanta's future financial flexibility, which is one of the biggest things that they have been emphasizing this offseason. Continuing that flexibility, even going into the season with a few open roster spots, just having so much flexibility, having 2 key rotation players just on 1-year deals. If things don't work out, giving up young talents like Jalen Johnson and recent top pick Zachary Ricochet plus a future first rounder is seriously too steep of a price. I wouldn't do this trade, especially when the Hawks have already built a roster loaded with complementary talent around Trae Young and Dyson Daniels. Jalen Johnson is that guy next to Trae that is really his co-star, but it's the focus has been on building just that well-rounded team. They've done a great job, and you don't need to mess that up this offseason. Now, this was never going to happen this offseason, but it is something to think about down the line. Jaylen Brown coming home. Brown, an Atlanta native, actually Marietta, he's fueled the speculation himself. He hasn't shied away from hinting that he might want to eventually come play for his hometown Hawks. So during a recent appearance on the Big Tigger morning show, he didn't shy away from the question. He was asked about potentially playing for his hometown team, but Brown simply said, "You never know. We'll see." Even mentioning that his grandmother would love to see him in a Hawks uniform. That's not nothing, man. If your grandma's pushing to get you home, I mean, shoot. For now, the Celtics do seem focused on that little partial reset after Jason Tatum's injury and an offseason of cost-cutting moves. They dealt Porzingis to Atlanta in a cost-cutting move. They dealt Drew Holiday to the Portland Trailblazers in a cost-cutting move. They're letting Al Horford walk in free agency, although he hasn't signed anywhere yet, but most expect him to sign with the Golden State Warriors. But Brown's future remains uncertain, his long-term future especially now. He's going to enter this upcoming season with the Boston Celtics as their number 1 option, so he's got a lot to prove. I mean, if he can go as that number 1 option in Boston with a very depleted roster, a very different roster, and average like 28 points a game and on good efficiency and lead them to the playoffs, he's going to be put in some serious conversations, and maybe he'll prove that he's really worth that absolutely ridiculous contract. If the Hawks' current core can't deliver on, the results that we expect out of them in the next few seasons. I mean, we don't expect them. I mean, well, we do expect them to be at the top of the Eastern Conference next season. Just placing those expectations as fans, because that's what you do. And when you've got a bright direction, you want to win as much as you can. But if they can't, make the finals in like 3-4 years, you genuinely got to start considering making a blockbuster move. I mean, getting off of one of these guys, maybe two of those guys, and packaging them for a proven star. That's something to think about. I mean, don't be surprised if eventually down the line Atlanta explores a move for a big name star like Jaylen Brown. I know some people like Anthony Edwards, and while that would be a dream scenario, that is even further out of the picture. So that's gonna do it for today's episode of Hawks Latest. So from the Hawks' outstanding work in their community, and it's an event that I was super glad to cover, to some trade rumors that could reshape the future of the franchise, it's clear this organization is exciting off the court, as much as it is on it, and especially this upcoming season when they've got a super new, super exciting roster. So once again, I am Zach Langley, aka Langley ATL. If you enjoyed today's breakdown of Hawks Latest, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single update here on the channel. We're going to be pumping out videos every single day, keeping you guys informed on the latest and the greatest regarding the Atlanta Hawks. But yeah, let me know in the comments. What do you think about the event that I described to y'all? I mean, do y'all appreciate that sort of analysis? If you were there, I mean, what valuable lessons would you hope to take back with you? Also, let me know about Jaylen Brown. I want to hear about your thoughts. Would you do that ridiculous trade of Jalen Johnson, Zachary Reese in a future verse? I think that's a little too steep for me, but nonetheless, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts. So anyways, I will see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video.